encouraging all things diversity and inclusion aren't just this thing we do this one time. It's something that we continue to do.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Hi, I'm Ayana King, and I'm the owner and founder of a little small boutique called Maximum Communications. And what I do is I work with organizations to help them understand, recognize, and even encourage all the benefits in building diverse and inclusive teams and organizations. Hi, Melva, it's good to meet you.
Hi, Anna. I'm glad to meet you too. I'm looking forward to this, and I hope that works out for us.
Yeah. Melba, where are you from? Where are you from?
I'm at the Boulevard in St. Charles, Missouri.
Okay.
I'm in it, and I am enjoying every minute of it.
That's great. Melba, I can't wait till I'm able to move into retirement living too. Honestly.
Oh, yes, you can.
Maybe I'll come and visit with you, Melba.
That would be a good idea. I like visitors. I like company.
Me too. Me too.
What's the purpose of Aerodiversity and Inclusion
Well,
video?
that's a really good question. I think you'll see more and more organizations are starting to have conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I think Aero's purpose is not just to have a conversation. I think it's to have an ongoing conversation and to engage not just their team members, but also their residents so that we can understand what it means and also the benefits, and again, building really healthy, diverse, and inclusive communities.
Well, in a community, there's a lot of differences and inclusions and in among the people. And how do you handle that?
I think you handle it with love, right? I think really having a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds with a lot of experiences is really good. It's not just good for Aero, right? It's not just good for your community. It really is good for mankind. It's good for humankind, for us to get to know one another, interact with one another. And that's also how innovation is born.
Well, it's so hard. Sometimes it's so hard to get along with other. I mean, I have no problem getting along with people, period. But so many have different ideas about things, and sometimes that's hard to handle. But anyway, I'll go on. My next thing here is, what is DEI? I do not know what that means.
Oh, good question. So, and I'm glad you asked this, because folks who do this kind of work, we get to talking our jargon, and sometimes we don't stop to explain what DEI means. And really, DEI, and some people call it by different names. They may call it D and I, but DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh, all of it. Okay. Yeah. Why is it important?
Well, I really do think it's important for us to have diversity again. So first, what I want to do is I want to remind people what diversity really means, because what happens is when people talk about diversity, they automatically go to what I call the big three. So I'm from Detroit, from the Motor City right outside of, okay? And when we talk about the big three, we're talking about the automotive industry. But when I talk about the big three, when I'm talking about in the context of diversity, the big three people usually talk about are race, ethnicity, and gender, right? But really, diversity is about more than just those three. And so when you're talking about diversity, it really is representation. So think about all the differences that you can find, not just in your community, but in the world coming together. That's good because we learn from one another. We share ideas, we create community, we break down barriers. And that's just really good for us as a society, because we've been so siloed for so long. We're feeling the growing pains of all of that now in 2021, as we have for hundreds of years. But this is different. I think that what we're experiencing today in 2021 is different. And so encouraging not just diversity, but also that inclusion, which is really including one another, building trust with one another. It's good. It just is really good for us as a society.
Oh, I believe that very definitely. What role do you hope Aero residents will play in promoting diversity and inclusion?
Oh, such a good question, Melba. I think that residents play a pivotal role, right? Because this is your community. And so I think for a very long time, people left older folks out of the conversation when it came to creating diverse communities, diverse organizations. I think people have a lot of inconsistent and maybe even unfair thoughts about seniors' contributions. But older adults, they really can be a bridge, right? So I think it's really good for older people to get involved in these conversations, show that it's important to them too. For too long, people have been saying, well, we have to wait for the newer generations to come along. No, we don't. No, we don't. Older people play a pivotal role and always have in the way our societies function. And so why should they not take up the mantle on this cause too, right? And so for Aero residents, really to be so engaged in conversations about, again, not just diversity, but also inclusion, building community. I just love it. I think you play a pivotal role in how we will function as a society, and more specifically in senior communities.
Well, not only the people that live here or the residents, what about the employees as
Oh,
well?
yes, Melba, Melba, that's the ticket, right? Because what happens a lot of times is, especially for our industry, the senior living industry, what happens is people look around with their eyeballs only and they go, oh yeah, well, the industry is diverse. We've got lots of women, we've got lots of Black and brown folks. And then I always say, where are they? Where are they though? Because a lot of times, oftentimes, Black and brown folks, they are in hourly positions, they are in housekeeping jobs, they are in dietary positions, and very rarely do you see people of color in top leadership positions, which is really important because having that kind of representation really can attract new talent, and not just new talent, but also potential residents for your community, right? So I think that the industry as a whole should be looking at more ways to make our teams more diverse at every level. And I think it's pivotal that residents also play a role in that. Asking questions. That was a good question you asked me. What about the team members? What about the employees? And I agree with you. What about them? How do we create not just diversity, but again, inclusion there too?
Well, do you feel they are more qualified in some places than they are what they're doing?
Oh, definitely. I feel like a lot of folks who have been looked over, maybe passed over, definitely have the qualifications. But what happens is even well-meaning people, right? We still have bias, right? And so we look at somebody and we decide what role they play. And then we decide that's the role that they stay in. So we cast people in these different roles, and then we don't give them opportunities in many instances to ever break out of that role into something new. Now, I was very fortunate when I worked in the industry. I started in a community as an activities director, but I was able to move up into a corporate position, and that was great for me. I was glad that people gave me that opportunity because that doesn't
Well,
always happen.
congratulations to you. Sounds like you're doing a wonderful job.
Thanks, Melba. Well, Melba, I broke out of that role though, and I started my own business. Here I am today.
Yes, and that's a good thing. I'm glad to talk to you. Are there any hopes that Aero will cover this in the coming months?
Well, yeah, this is an ongoing series, and I will tell you that I love that about Aero was this wasn't something that they did on the fly. A lot of the discussions that lots of folks in many industries right now about diversity and inclusion, what happened was these conversations were a result of all of the social unrest we saw happening in 2020, right? And so what a lot of organizations did was they were reactionary. We've got to do something right now. and they did maybe one thing, maybe two things, maybe they did a series and they were done, okay? And that's performative, because if you really want to understand something, if you really want to make cultural change, it can't be this one and done thing. It's got to be ongoing education. It's got to be ongoing opportunities for discussion, like how you and I are having. And so I love that Aero said, you know, we're not going to do one and done. This is going to be an ongoing series and just a part of the way that we work and we communicate the importance of really growing diverse and inclusive communities in the way, you know, we interact with one another. Giving these opportunities is really great.
Well, do you feel the employees here need to go on with their education to achieve these things, to be with the diversity here?
I
With
do.
that,
I
well,
do. But I'll say this too, Melba. I think everyone does. I do this for a living and I need education every day. So it doesn't stop, right? I'm always learning. And when I have opportunities to share what I learn, I do that. So I think really what we have to do is we have to understand that talking about, understanding, encouraging all things diversity and inclusion aren't just, again, this thing we do this one time. It's something that we continue to do. You continue to grow diverse communities. You continue to build relationships and build trust, which is how inclusion happens. And so we could all use more education, residents, employees, experts like me.
well, what do you think the Arrow has planned to promote these diversity and inclusions?
Well, I don't want to give away too many secrets, but I do know that this series is ongoing. And so you'll continue to have educational opportunities every month where you're talking to lots of different folks from lots of different backgrounds, which I think is good. And then also, I know that Arrow has engaged in workshops and webinar series that they offer and provide to their team members for ongoing education too. And I'm excited about that launching in 2022.
Well, how do you encourage people to do this is, I think, the big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have someone in the organization to encourage this.
First of all, you have to do it very intentionally, right? You have to be intentional in what you do. And all of these initiatives, even these conversations, could not, would not ever happen if there weren't someone in leadership saying that it's important and also doing the work themselves. And so again, that's one of the reasons that I love working with Arrow is it's because your leadership team, your CEO, Stephanie Harris, your COO, Amanda Tweeten, they came together and said, this is important, not just for our front line, not just for our residents, this is important for us. So they started doing the work first. And so how do you encourage people to have these conversations through top-down leadership? By people in positions of authority, making sure that everyone knows it's important to them, and for them providing opportunities, educational opportunities for others to learn. And in the same way, you know, that works for team members very good, but maybe that doesn't work for residents very well, right? Maybe it doesn't. So I think one thing that residents can do intentionally to really grow a community that's not just diverse, but again, inclusive, one that purposefully includes others, makes them feel welcome, makes them feel comfortable, is just being open, honest, and friendly, you know, inviting people in. I know that you all have what's called a Jolly Squad. So purposefully meeting new residents, bringing them into the fold, sitting with them at dinner, going for a walk with them, inviting them to activities, asking them about their own experiences in life, and then sharing yours. I mean, that's how relationships are built, right? So
Definitely.
so just purposefully getting to know someone. And then when you get to know someone, and when it feels safe, and we can kind of tell that in our bodies sometimes through body language and just how we spend time with folks, maybe now I get to ask you maybe some of those harder questions that I'm battling with myself. But I feel like it would be, okay for me to ask those questions of you. Like you and I are having a conversation right now. If you had questions you'd want to ask me, I'm open to that, you know, as we're all learning. Sometimes the only way we can learn is through asking or through experience.
But there has to be more people like you to go to all these aero places that they own, which I don't know how many there are, but how many aero places are there?
Lots. I want to say over 30.
30 all over. Well, I feel like there has to be more than just you. There has to be you're a wonderful person, I could tell, that would help people grow into these positions because you're a good example. And I think you need to find other people. You're the one too in the upper, because I do things here that I can do to help. I talk to people. I'm on the welcoming committee, and that's one of my biggest thrills. I get to meet a lot of new people here.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be somebody like you to help to grow in our each community, because like you're only one person. I don't know how else to word it,
Yeah,
but
I do
I
know
think
what
you
you
know what
mean.
I'm
So number
trying to
one, it's
say.
perfect that you are part of the Welcome Committee and we're having this conversation, because what it is you're turning into an ambassador for diversity and inclusion, right?
Yes.
The other thing is, the sign of a good leader is that a good leader can make other leaders. So one thing that Aero has done, and why they partner with me, and again, I'm so grateful for this partnership, is because that's what I'm helping them to do. Is so even if you don't see it right now, there are people across Aero communities who are sitting in workshops with me, who are asking tough questions, who are learning what it means to be not just a diverse community, but also an inclusive one. We didn't even touch on equity yet, because equity is the goal. And what equity is it's freedom from bias. It is, as best you can, being fair and impartial, right?
Yes.
All of
Yes.
that, all
Oh,
of that takes
definitely.
time. It
Oh,
takes time.
definitely.
And so what we do is we engage your team members in conversations to help them break down their own bias, help them explore maybe some of the challenges that they're having internally. And what happens is, as they learn and they grow, they share that in the community. That's how communities change. What we have to be very conscious of, though, Melba, is that that takes time. It really does, right? Relationships, they don't happen overnight, because real relationships uh, are built on a foundation of trust. And so when you have
Yes.
lots of differences in a place where people
Oh,
maybe
definitely.
don't understand one another, it takes a long time for those walls to come down. And that's okay, because it's not a race.
Oh, I know. It's hard to get to know everybody when the communities are this big, but
Right.
I can name out probably 90% of the people here by now, but not all of them. The memory when you get this age sometimes doesn't remember ages, but I think you've done a wonderful job in explaining all these things to me. What do you say would be the best way to verify or get to the inclusion in this community?
It's a good question, Melba. We get to inclusion, first of all, very slowly, because it takes time. So inclusion is really purposefully including other people, right? And so part of
Yes.
including is not just inviting somebody to activities or sitting with them during a meal. It's purposefully asking them about their life, what they need, how you could support them, how they could support you. It's relationship building. And so when we think about the senior living industry in general, okay, for many decades, it's been overwhelmingly female and overwhelmingly white, okay? So one of the things that we could do to purposefully include others, I think about just the way that we recruit and where we recruit. There are lots of men, who would love to live in a senior community of any color, right? So purposefully inviting men to come and join your community, having activities that aren't centered around just for men, right? Just poker and drinking beer. Really being intentional and building a community where everybody, no matter what their background, would feel included. But see, that's hard when you don't already have some diversity and you wouldn't have an idea of what would attract other people. So that's what I mean when I say it takes time and it's growing intentionally. So if we look around our communities and we say, well, our communities are not very diverse, our communities are not very inclusive, we would be asking ourselves, well, what would a utopia look like at our community? Um, how would representation show up and benefit our community? And then we would intentionally look for ways to grow that kind of community, right? And building those relationships. I love that you talked about the welcome committee. Because the welcome committee is a huge part of that, and just welcoming people and making sure that they know this is your home. Even if we have differences, this is your home and my home. Arrow talks about traditions, sharing traditions with one another, learning about one another. We're in the holiday season, and holiday season doesn't just mean Christmas, right? It means Hanukkah, it means Kwanzaa, it means lots of things to lots of different people. Even sharing in some of the cultural traditions that others have is a way to really grow an inclusive community.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I think I'm pretty happy to say here at the Boulevard in St. Charles, we are growing in male membership. We have a lot more men here now than we ever have had. And I think it's good. We've got couples and husbands and wives, and we've got a lot of single men now that we didn't have before. So we are growing in diversity here, I feel.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, I hope it's good, and I hope it stays that way. I hope that these gentlemen that are coming now will encourage their friends to come and join us as well.
That's
I
right.
understand. And so I think that's a good thing that you're talking about. We do need the diversity among male and female, as you so say, because I think when I first started here, it was almost strictly female, but it's
Yeah.
getting better. It's improving a lot, and the men are all just as nice as the ladies, that's for sure.
Of course they are. Of course they are. So representation, right? We
Yes.
want many people, many voices, many experiences from many backgrounds. That's good for us. That's good for us. And I think when I see, few and far between, Melba, but I think when I see community, race, and ethnicity, not just in gender, but also age diversity, okay? Because what happens is a lot of communities are 55 and up, but you don't see a lot of younger seniors because they feel like they don't fit and don't belong. I love to see a community that has a mix of generations. We
Yes.
need that. We need that.
Well, I don't think we have too many younger ones here. I know of a few, maybe 65 or something, but most of them are like myself, 80s. I
That's all
should
right.
say. I'm getting up there, getting close to that next number too.
And that's a blessing because not everybody lives to be in their 80s, right?
Yes.
So I think that's another good thing is having younger people see that really growing older, especially in a retirement community, in a senior living home like yours, people aren't just like laying around just waiting to meet their maker. They are living. They still have so much to contribute to society. And I think younger adults need to see more of that in senior living.
Well, a lot of the younger adults here, I feel, are here because one of their spouse or their husband are disabled. And so they are much younger, and they are bringing their opposites with them
Yeah.
to get help here. I think it's a wonderful experience. I don't know how else to explain it, but they're all, everyone here are very nice people.
And
So
I think that's a wonderful experience too for someone who is a caregiver to their
yes,
spouse, even a younger senior, a younger older adult who is a caregiver. That's a tough role for someone.
yes, it
Um,
is.
and so to have a community that understands that, where you have the support, where your loved one is still being cared for while you can still live your life as well, guilt-free. Who wouldn't want that? People want that. What happens is not everybody can see it for themselves. So that's why it's important for us in this industry to, again, show representation, because this kind of living, the living that you're enjoying today, Melba, is living for everyone. It really is.
Yes. What can the community do to make these things happen?
So what you're
Yeah.
asking me, Melba, is how can communities, again, like more tangibly encourage inclusion? One of the things I think they can do is the communities themselves, the team members, is to be inclusive. I think them building relationships intentionally, I think that's a really good starting point. And I think, again, we lead by example. One of the things that I think really helps people along this journey, as they're learning about diversity, as they're learning about inclusion, as they're exploring what it means to grow an equitable workplace or community that you live in, right? Is, I think, again, just a lot of opportunities for education. So whether that be conversations like this, or a book series, or documentaries, or podcasts, I think the more we learn about others, okay, people who are not like us, people who are different from us in many ways, the better, because that incites curiosity about one another, right? And so
Yes.
when I start to learn about someone else, and now I see someone else, maybe who's new, I know a little bit about their experience, even if I don't know them, because I've been intentional in learning about other people. And so again, I think relationship building is the way that we grow these inclusive communities. And one of the ways you do that is by intentionally learning about others, and welcoming others in with open arms.
Oh, that's a good idea. I
Mhm.
hope it works. I mean, I would like to see that work.
I think
Yes,
it will.
we need that. We all need that for our own sanity, if nothing else, to
Yeah,
get to know other people as well. I,
yeah. And I
I,
just say again that the more people we meet, the more we step out of our own comfort zones and learn about others, the better a society we build, because now we find out that we have much more in common than we do not in common. And creating human connection is what building relationships is all about. And remember what I said about inclusion. Inclusion's foundation is built on relationships and trust building and being able to say what needs to be said, and being able to be comfortable and to be myself in my own skin. And I'll just tell you that for me, Melba, personally, especially in the workplace, especially in corporate America, for a very long time, I couldn't be myself. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I felt like a lot of times there was a wall up, there was a mask up, because there was no purposeful intention around relationship building. So, people who meet me today, who worked with me 4 years ago, 5 years ago, definitely a decade ago, will say, I don't even know this person. And I would say to them, you're right, because you didn't know me then. Because you didn't know me then. So I think purposeful relationship building is so good. Again, not just for the workplace, but for communities, because that's how we grow relationships. It's through intention.
well, I find myself guilty because I do have some closer friends than others, and you kind of stick with them a lot because you're maybe moved in at the same time, or you grow to know, live close to each other here in the community. And I think I find myself guilty of that, being with some of the same people all the time. And I should get out of that shell. I know that, but it's
Yeah.
hard.
But what about, Melba, if you thought about it a different way? What about, instead of you thinking about getting out, what about if you thought about including in? Including in, instead of you having to jump out, what about if you just opened your doors and you invited in? That's number one, is to think about it in that way. And then the second thing I want you to think about is about guilt, because you said, oh, I feel guilty about that. Let me tell you why I don't like guilt. Because guilt and shame stop the very important work of us moving forward. because when people feel guilty and they feel shame, oftentimes they shut down. They don't know what to do, so they don't do anything. They don't discuss. They don't open up. They remain in a box, right? That's what guilt and shame does to you. But when you put guilt and shame aside and you say, okay, that's something that I did, but today is a new day. I don't have to do that again. Now you're open up to possibilities. That's how we move forward.
Well, I find that, just like going into the dining room, each table seats maybe 4, and you
Mhm.
find yourself always sitting with the same group.
Yeah.
But they'll all do the same thing. You go through the dining room and they're all in the same situation. It's the same people at every table that sit together every day. And
Yeah.
that's really hard to explain or expand when you're used to being with your friends every day like that. And
Yeah.
that's not really expanding. I know that's not good, but that's what's happening.
Yeah, and I think that that happens in a lot of communities. People find their core group and they stick to them, right?
Yes.
This is my tribe. One of the things that I think is really helpful in breaking out of that, first of all, I wouldn't try this during dining time because people do like to sit with people and have conversations. But I think about other activities that you could sort of put together that are really sort of like speed dating or speed networking, where people moved around from table to table and got to know one another, in a
It
timed
should
sort
be.
of fashion. Yeah, I think
I
that's a really good way
agree.
yeah, that's a really good way to get to know other people in your community, because you're right. If all of your interaction is planned around meals or the same activities, especially that pair you with people, there's going to be little opportunity for people to get to know each other outside of that.
Well, do you have anything else to say? We do have some things. They are trying different groups to get like activities and that where different people do get together, which is good here.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. And we have our bus trips take us different places together with others.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Now that you have a better understanding of what diversity and inclusion is, I think you do. I'm not going to quiz you though, Melba, but now that I think you understand it, how would you explain our conversation about what diversity and inclusion means to the folks at your lunch table today?
Well, that would be easy. Or, I mean, they would tell their differences and opinions on what was going on that day, whether they liked it or not, or whether they liked the food or not, or that would be the differences. The inclusions would be to invite someone else to join you instead of sitting with the same people every day. That's the only thing I can think of to say right now.
Melva, let me tell you why I love that so much. Because when I'm explaining to people about the difference between diversity and inclusion and equity, I always use what I call the dinner party analogy. And this was perfect because when I do that, I say diversity is the dinner invite. Who gets an invite to sit at your table with you? Who's represented, right? Representation, diversity. And then I say inclusion is actually your seat at the table, though. So you can be invited somewhere and still not be included. If you've ever been to a networking event or a dinner party where you didn't know anyone, you're invited to dinner. But if you're sitting there, at a table where everyone else is having a conversation and you're just, eating your roast beef or whatever it is, you don't really feel included. So
I've had that
inclusion,
happen.
yeah. So inclusion is conversation, right? It's interacting with people. It's getting to know them. And then if we took that a step further, equity in the dinner party analogy would be all access to the meal. So that means whatever you get on your plate, I can also have. So I may be a vegetarian, right? I'm not, but I could be. But if I wanted a T-bone steak, I could go up and get one too, because everything that's for you is also fully accessible to me. So I love that you use that example.
Okay. Is there anything else you need to tell me?
Keep doing the work, Melba. Keep doing the work. Keep doing the work. Keep learning. Keep growing. Keep sharing. And this is something that I want everybody to understand about older generations. Too often I hear again, You know, older people don't care about diversity. Older people don't care about inclusion. They don't care about social justice. That's not true. Many
That is
people,
not true.
it's not true. Many white people, were marching in the 60s. Many for social justice, for civil rights. Many were. Those people are older people today. And you know what? It was important to them then. It's important to them now. So Melba, you keep doing the work, keep encouraging your community, keep having conversations with the folks who are your neighbors, keep talking to Aero team members, and just keep sharing what you know and spreading the love, Melba. Keep spreading it.
I appreciate your love for this.
Aw.
I could tell you're doing a very wonderful job of spreading this. And I appreciate talking to you today. I think I've learned a lot about inclusion and diversion, and I think that's very good. I know you're so right. We all need to do that.
Yeah. Me included, Melba. I'm learning all the time, every day.
Well, I hope I'm learning a lot more now.
Thank you, Melba.
With talking to you has helped me a lot.
I'm glad, Melba. It was so nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you, Ayana. I
Thank
was looking forward to this. At first, I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I'm enjoying every minute of it. And I know you're a wonderful person,
I like
and
to
I
hear it.
hope you keep up the good work.
Thank you, Melba. I will.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Enjoyed
Melba.
being with you all.
Merry Christmas, Melba. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you. I'm looking forward to it. Bye-bye.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful